Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my guide covering the Caeser BTT. This is the civilian faction airplane. It is a Cessna, and it's overall a great aircraft. Bohemia did a great job with this thing. I mean, the model looks amazing, both in the exterior and interior, and I just love everything about the aircraft. Now, there's two variants of this. There's the Caeser BTT, and then there's the Caeser BTT Racing. The Racing has a higher maximum speed and a higher acceleration rate. It is more maneuverable both on the ground and the air. It can land at lower speeds and it can take off at lower speeds. But the normal variant is much more common on multiplayer servers, and because of that, it's the best thing to get used to flying. And once you're used to flying this, you can have a little fun with the racing variant. If we go ahead and hop on inside the aircraft, you'll see that overall it has a great interior. If I turn on the engine, and they did really good with the interior on this aircraft. It seats 4 people. You got your pilot, your co-pilot, and you can have 2 passengers in this. Now, as far as your taxiing, unlike jets where you have to fluctuate your throttle to kind of keep your taxiing level, I guess you could say, you can sit at 1 speed through the entire process of taxiing this aircraft, which is anywhere between 20 to 30% on the normal variant and 20 to 25% on the racing variant. As you can see, I'm sitting at 29%. I can just sit here through the entire process of taxiing out to the runway. If you do not know how to taxi an aircraft, go ahead and check out the How to Fly a Jet guide. That covers everything you need to know about taxiing the aircraft, your takeoff, everything you need to know will be there. This is a separate guide basically covering the speed and how to handle, assess Caeser and everything. The actual controls behind it all is covered in that guide there. Once I'm out to the runway here, I'll go ahead and line up. And then we can go for a takeoff. Now, the normal variant of this aircraft can take off at 140 kilometers an hour. With the flaps down once, it can take off at 125 kilometers an hour, and the flaps down twice, 115 kilometers an hour. The racing variant can take off at 130 kilometers an hour. With the flaps down once, 115 kilometers an hour. The flaps down twice, 110 kilometers an hour. So we go ahead and speed up here and start the takeoff. And we'll start gaining speed, like I said, take off at 140 kilometers an hour in the normal version without any consequences. Which, with the low acceleration rate on this aircraft, you cover about as much distance as you would in a takeoff with something like, say, a wipeout. So the actual distance you travel on the runway is very similar, but you're taking off at a much lower speed. Now, once in the air, you will notice this thing handles like a brick. It is very stiff on its controls, and a little weird to fly at first until you get used to it. The racing variant flies a lot more like a jet, is a lot more maneuverable. But I personally prefer the normal variant because I'm usually using this to fly transport. So landing at things like this small airfield up here in the north is something I do a lot. And having that very fine control over the aircraft is really important for those types of landings. But if you're just looking to have fun, the racing variant is definitely much better. Now, another thing to note is if you go upside down, the aircraft naturally points towards the ground, so you have to hold W to keep your nose pointed upwards, otherwise you will crash and die and all that good stuff. Just know that while upside down, you do slowly aim towards the ground and die, because this aircraft on its own naturally will aim up into the sky without you doing anything. If I just sat here and flew like this, I'm slowly going to be just gaining altitude. Now, going for a landing. Of course, going to completely cut our throttle. No need to put your landing gear down in here because it is your solid landing gear. You cannot retract or anything like that, so no need to worry about that. You can approach and cut your throttle all the way down to 180 kilometers an hour. 180 kilometers an hour is the approach speed I use on both the normal version and the racing version. That's the speed at which they sit. It's perfectly level. You're not going to stall out, but you're not going to approach the runway going too fast. Once you've hit that speed, I like to put my throttle anywhere between 15 to 20%, and I find that to be the best. On the racing variant as well, for both variants, the anywhere between 15 to 20% works perfectly. Now for your actual landing, once you're about 100 meters away from the runway, you can completely cut your throttle, and of course use X, your air brake, to drop your speed until you go in for your landing. Landing speed on the normal variant is 140 kilometers an hour and 130 kilometers an hour on the racing variant. You can land with your flaps down, but if you're landing on a very short runway, like the one up north, this makes it a lot more difficult. But if you're on something like a very large runway here by Athera, or say out on the salt flats, then landing your flap downs is not a big deal and really won't affect too much. But that is the basics behind the Caeser BTT. Overall, one of my favorite vehicles in the game. It's a ton of fun to fly. And like I said, very common on roleplay servers. I mean, you can go on almost any server, even modded servers, and usually find this thing. So I hope you guys found this guide helpful, and I will see you in the next one.